Whenever making the transition between Central California and Southern California through the Tejon Pass and the Grapevine section along Highway 99, I'm reminded that this is one of the last experiences of Hollywood film legend James Dean during his last ride. The road he traveled in 1955 looked much different than today's modern freeway. He passed by gas stations and stores that have been erased from the landscape, but the views of the mountains and the flat plains of the valley are basically the same. I'm mindful that even famous people can suffer the consequences of excess speed. On September 30th, 1955, Dean was making his way into the Central Valley of California, and the 24-year-old star likely would have reached his destination of Salinas if only that traffic stop hadn't occurred just before he reached Bakersfield. Hi, so welcome to this episode of History Hunters. I'm on Highway 99, just south of Bakersfield, and this has been identified as the location where James Dean received his traffic ticket at 3:30 p.m. on September 30th, 1955. He was traveling up to Salinas, California to head to a race for the weekend. Hours after he was stopped here, he was killed in a traffic accident. So right over here, this telephone pole, little south of exit 166, has been identified as the spot where James Dean received his ticket.
He was running around 70 miles an hour, and so was the truck behind him. At that time, the vehicle speed was 55 and 45 for a vehicle totaled in another vehicle.
And just want to show you the pole here, where it identifies this as JDLD, James Dean's last ride. I do not know how this came to pass, that this has been identified as the location where James Dean received his traffic ticket on that day. However, everybody has come to accept it as the place. Odie Hunter was the CHP officer who wrote James Dean a speeding ticket just 2 hours before the movie star was killed in an accident near Cholame. The funny thing is that he had no idea who James Dean was. For decades, he would tell people, quote, "To me, he was just another guy who was going too fast." It's not especially odd that Hunter didn't recognize James Dean. His face wouldn't have been familiar to those who weren't moviegoers. Hunter likely never saw East of Eden, which was released that April, and Dean's biggest films, Giant and Rebel Without a Cause, would be released after his death. Dean was not unlike a lot of 24-year-olds. He loved racing and fast cars and was on his way to Salinas for a race.
I told him that he shouldn't be running that fast, and he agreed that he was running too fast. They told me why, that he was trying to break his car in a little bit, so the next day when he run it at Monterey, it'd be loose up a little bit. I told him he shouldn't be doing that. I said that's a good way to get killed, or wrenching something like that. And he said, okay, he'd slow it down a little bit.
Officer Hunter once told a reporter that all highway patrolmen gave tickets for 65 miles an hour, even though people like Dean were going much faster than that. If a guy cooperated, you gave him 65 miles an hour so you wouldn't hurt him too much, he also was quoted as saying. The citation instructed Dean to appear in court in Lamont on October 17th, but later the ticket was voided with the words, "Void, deceased." I cannot say for sure if this is the actually old highway or if this is the frontage road. I know since James Dean was here in 1955 that the freeway has been expanded to over there, and as you can tell, it's quite busy today. Some reports say that it was north of the tiny highway stop known as Mettler Station, but I think it's because people are confused about the direction that Officer Hunter was going. Hunter was working the 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. shift policing Highway 99 in southern Kern County. He was on Wheeler Ridge cruising south toward the county line. He passed Mettler Station, which at that time consisted of a ranch house, cafe. He reportedly saw Dean passing another vehicle in excess of 70 miles an hour or so and flipped a U-turn coming back north after Dean. Right behind Dean was stunt coordinator Bill Hickman, driving a 1955 Ford Country Squire wagon, pulling a trailer for the race car. It was called the Little Bastard. Hickman was traveling faster than the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, pulling a trailer, so he got a ticket as well. While he was being cited here, Dean allegedly told Hunter that he was on his way to Salinas to the races and that the car only had 300 miles on it. He said he was driving to loosen up the engine, adding that it won't run right under 80 miles an hour. One of the things that I often wonder about is in that 10 minutes that he was stopped by Officer Hunter, had he not been stopped, would he have been killed later on down the road? He definitely would not have been in line to crash with Donald Turnipseed outside of Paso Robles, California. So whether or not you believe in fate or destiny, or if that was just his time to come, you have to wonder how history would have been changed had he not been receiving that traffic ticket.
After the traffic stop was over, James Dean and passenger Rolf Rutherwick continued up Highway 99 through Bakersfield. Unlike the stormy weather we encountered on this day, the actor enjoyed warm, sunny skies that evening as he pulled off of Highway 99 here at a place called Famoso and made his way westbound on Highway 46. The Porsche named the Little Bastard carried Dean through the tiny town of Wasco on their way to a fill-up at a gas station near Lost Hills, where Highways 46 and 33 intersect. At the southwest corner of the intersection is Blackwell's Corner General Store, also known as James Dean's last stop. It's reported that Dean bought a Coke and an apple before he continued westbound on State Highway 466 at about 5:30 p.m. The traffic ticket issued by Officer Hunter apparently didn't faze the actor. Witnesses driving a car westbound just moments before the accident at about 5:45 p.m. reported that Dean passed them driving over 85 miles an hour, running one oncoming car off the road to avoid a collision. In an ironic twist, James Dean recorded a public service announcement in which he talked about the dangers of driving too fast.
No gym races in the tradition, you might say. Real racing cars, real tracks. How fast will your car go?
106, 7.
You've won a few races, haven't you?
Oh, one or two.
I'd like your opinion about fast driving on the highway. Do you think it's a good idea?
I took a lot of unnecessary chances on the highways. And I started racing, and now I drive on the highways. I'm extra cautious, because no one knows what they're doing. Half the time, you don't know what this guy's going to do with that one. I find myself being very cautious on the highway. I don't have the urge to speed on the highway. Take it easy driving. The life you might save might be mine. You know?
James Dean met his fate just east of Cholame Valley at a place where highways 466 and 41 intersect. It was there that college student Donald Turnipseed, driving a 1950 Ford, which was built like a tank, made a left turn in front of the Little Bastard. The impact killed Dean instantly while his passengers sustained critical injuries. Within an hour and a half, the world would hear about the death of James Dean.
We've come here to the Green Lawn Cemetery in Bakersfield to pay tribute to former CHP officer Odie Hunter, the one that gave James Dean the traffic ticket. So as soon as I get here, it's raining. That's typical. And then they started firing up their gas-powered leaf blowers. So when you come into the cemetery, you'll see this white mausoleum over here, and GPS coordinates on Find a Grave are way off. But he's right back here. This red marble or red granite tombstone, Odie Hunter, 1925 to 2017. And right next to him is his wife, Pauline Judy Hunter, who lived from 1915 to 2012. Now, Mr. Hunter passed away in a rest home here in Bakersfield. He took great pleasure in the notoriety that he was the one who gave James Dean the traffic ticket on September 30th, 1955.
Odie Hunter was born in Phoenix and became a CHP officer after spending nearly 16 years in the Air Force as a radar operator, bombardier, and navigator. He lived in Greenfield because he wanted to be closer to his job with the CHP, most of which was spent in the substation in Fort Tejon. Hunter finished his 30-year career in Santa Barbara. His badge number was 930, which meant that he was the 930th officer hired by the CHP, which had been formed in 1929. Hunter, who was only 30 years old on his most famous stop, said he never gave a ticket to another celebrity. He had a quiet career, firing his weapon only twice.
Once I stopped a guy late at night and he wouldn't put his hands in the air, Hunter once said. I took out my revolver and fired 2 feet over his head. You should have seen how fast his hands shot up. Hunter had been married 2 times, the longest, 66 years, to his late wife Pauline. They had one son who died in his 40s of lung cancer. In his advanced stage, Hunter moved into the Carriage House Estates, an assisted living facility in Bakersfield, where he passed away. An ambulance scooped up the crushed body of James Dean, who sustained a broken neck and facial injuries, and took him to the Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital, where he was declared dead. His body was prepared in Paso Robles and shipped back to his hometown of Fairmont, Indiana, where he rests in the Park Cemetery. Thousands of people visit Dean's grave every year, and his marker is routinely covered in lipstick kisses, much in the same way as the marble face of Marilyn Monroe's crypt in Los Angeles. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of History Hunters. Now, in the future, we plan to visit the location where James Dean had his fatal collision. That might be some time off, but we do intend to get to it. We would love to have you leave a comment and give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to History Hunters if you haven't already done so. Thank you so much.